I will show you in this tutorial how to manage containers using Podman. This is brought to you by the Learning PHP course on ojamboshop.com. So Podman is an alternative to Docker. It can be used as a Docker alternative. It uses the same commands, and some of the benefits is that it's daemon-less, which allows a regular user to manage containers. So with Docker, one of the issues is that it has to be, some of the functionality has to be run as a root user. So that could, or super user, that could obviously open up security risks. Another bonus of Podman is that it can manage multiple containers as a single unit, as a group. So for this particular tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very simple HTML file, and I'm going to download a container that's going to have an operating system. For example, it's going to be Fedora, and obviously I'll install Apache for the web server. I know it's a little bit heavy just for one web page, but I just want to show you how quickly you can create containers. So if you don't understand what a container is instead of running a full virtual server, you can just run a container, and then you can pass these containers around, or you can create what's called a Docker file, which is a script in how to replicate the same environment as you have. So this way other people can replicate the same container. So for example, if I wanted PHP or MySQL, in my particular container on the script, I could have like a very old version of PHP, a very old version of MySQL. So sometimes that's needed when there's some, for example, in my use case, some of my clients, when they contact me for the first time, they might be running a very ancient, version of Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So before I can upgrade, when I perform an upgrade, I need to make sure that I have a backup of their current site with the same parameters and everything. Then I can upgrade slowly until I update it, both MySQL, Apache, and PHP to the latest version. So just go slow by slow. So that's one use for it. I said the other use also I explain is environment testing. So this way you can run, for example, there are usually some customers who have a node site. They just want to maintain it, but they don't really want to upgrade the, for example, the actual content, but they want to update, so it's easier to manage. So this is where container could be useful. So Podman by default stores containers in your home folder. This became an issue for me twice, because when I was running an encrypted partition, is that because it was saving everything in my home folder, I ran out of space, and I had to literally just destroy that partition and restart again because the encryption could not be expanded. I was using ButterFS partition and Fedora. Okay, so I also use personally for my learning PHP ebook. No, this course. Sorry, the course. I actually did have a pod. I used Podman to run it. So this way, if you took the course, which is still available on ojamboshop.com, is that you could actually. So for example, I think it was PHP 8.2. So in order to run PHP 8.2, I didn't want it to run on my personal server running my my e-commerce site. So what I did was I had a pod with PHP 8.2 running. So this way, if somebody tries to hack my system, whatever, they would fail, because all that would just be running inside a pod. And then this way, you could also have separate pods for different clients. So I explained what we're going to do in this tutorial. So if you don't know what a container is, I've explained it briefly. It's a software unit that packages code and all dependencies for different computing environments. And an image is basically the container that is standalone and executable. And so what a Docker is, it as a platform that builds and shares and runs container applications. So with the Podman, you will be able to, you can still run the Docker containers as well. And I explain what a Docker file is. This is the instructions, and everything is open source. So you don't know what open source means? It's freely available for platform modification and redistribution. So this is my operating environment here. Obviously, it does run like my system here. The CPU, you can see, came out in 2011. So you can see it's still capable. The only upgrades I did since then, I just got an SSD, obviously, and a monitor, but the monitor doesn't have anything to do with how fast it will run. So basically, it's just an HTML file. You can expand to see the code here, and here's the Docker file we'll create, and then we can build and run. So basically, in terms of websites, that's why you're using you don't have to run a website. You can run something else. But in this particular case, I'm using it to run a website. So this would necessitate running different port numbers. You can run the same port numbers as well, for example, but for my use case, I can't do that because I also have Apache installed locally for other use cases. So if I run the same port number without running, it'd be a conflict. So that's why I use different port numbers for that. What I'm saying is that you don't always need to run docs or the Docker images or pods for only websites. You can run something else completely. For example, maybe you just want to here's another example. Maybe you have some code that you need to run that runs an old version of Java or Python. So in that case, you can run it inside the container. So okay, so I think we've touched on all this, and I think we can actually begin. I think the introduction is a bit too long, so let's just begin. Before we begin, just a quick reminder that I'm hosting a live stream every day. So you simply go to ojumbo.com and you go here, for example, watch live, and then you can see the upcoming ones. For example, this is the one we're doing today, the manage containers with Podman, and it's on YouTube, and you can see the upcoming ones here as well. Okay, so also be sure to subscribe, like, follow, leave comments for more frequent content. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this so it doesn't get in the way. And I create a folder here called containers. I'll put it here so you can see what's happening. And then I'm going to be working on the command line. So let me actually clean this up a little bit. Oops. Okay. Just so I can zoom in here and you guys can see what's going on. Let me see. I'll zoom in a little bit. Yeah, there we go. I'll zoom in as much as I can. I think that should be enough. Okay. So I'm in the terminal. You can install Podman, the binaries. It's cross-platform compatible, meaning it's available for obviously Linux, BSD type systems, Unix, Mac OS, Windows, and Windows. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, okay. So so once it's installed, you just type Podman, and Podman, in this case, I want to I don't want to do it the manual way, so I said I'll create a Docker file instead. So let's create the Docker file. So there's several ways to do this, but I think the easiest way would be let's create it in a text file here. So I'll create new file and I'll call it Docker file. The reason I call it Docker file, it can be called anything for Podman. If you're using Docker, it has to actually be called Docker file. But I'm calling it Docker file because if people are migrating over from Docker to Podman, they'll probably still have a lot of Docker files. So this way, you can still reuse them. Oops, wrong one. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to create a file. it's just a text file. Here we go. So we'll call it Docker file. Yeah, that's a Docker file. So let's open this up in a text editor. Okay, we don't need any of this. Okay, so, and I think, there we go. I can zoom in as well so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so what we need here is the first, this is straight from the Docker stuff as well. So I want to get from the Fedora latest, meaning the latest stable version of Fedora Linux. Okay, then, well, the first thing I'll do is I'll run DNF update. So what this will do is it will perform any updates. This -y means instead of giving us a prompt, it will just it means yes, default to yes, and just continue without any input from the user, meaning you. And then after that, I do want to install. Again, I put yes because I don't want a prompt. So install httpd. This is the the Apache server, and I also want to get git and then DNF clean all, meaning that I don't want it to keep. It keeps a cache, so I don't want it to keep those files downloaded after installing and leave them in cache because I don't need them. Okay, then after that, I'll copy an index file, HTML, and we'll copy it to the Apache folder, which is /var/www/html/index.html. Okay. Then if there's any other files, I can also copy them. In my particular case, there's not going to be any other files. So then what I can do is I can say entry point user /s bin httpd d foreground. I spell that right. Yeah, foreground. That's it. So those are the 4 lines. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see them a bit better. Yeah, there we go. So from Fedora latest, this is the command we run. This is all 1 line, and line 3 you see here. We haven't created this file yet. We're going to create it next. So then I'll hit save. Then I can create another file here. I'll create another file. This will be the index.html file. Okay, so I'll just drag it in here, and I'll zoom in. Where is the zoom control? Okay, so we don't need this. Okay, I can still zoom in a bit more. Okay, so here we go, and I'll call this Podman test. And in the body here, I'll say something like make it h3. Okay, then I'll say Podman successfully installed Apache server. Oops. Then it forwarded forwarded the ports. The port, which port should I go? Oh, it ported port 80 to 80 locally. Okay, so that's good enough. Oh, let me put another one. By the way, oops. Yeah, I'll use emphasis. By the way, you can sign up for the Learning PHP course on href equals jamboshop.com. shop.com. I think we need to spell this wrong. And HTTPS. Okay. And I'll close off the emphasis. Okay. That was difficult because I usually use an IDE and it auto-completes. So there we go. So we have our index file and we have our Docker file. Everything looks fine. So we can close this now. All right, back to the command line. Now let's build our, so I type podman build. I'm gonna give it a tag. So the tag will be Fedora my httpd f, the file to use. So we're gonna use the Docker file. So you see it's running step 1, step 2 is done, so it's downloading. It downloaded Fedora, and I think I deleted Fedora, so this might take a little while to get. Hopefully the internet is, yeah, the internet is fine. So yeah, so it's gonna take a while to do this because it's, see, Fedora is 35 megabytes. Oh, it's done. And now it's already doing the update. So it's doing updates because Fedora got released in late October or early November. So obviously there have been updates since then. So that's why it updates it. And then it, you see, even did the time zone syncing as well. Well, I think it just, yeah, in March is when the time zone changed. So you see, it everything is done, and it created this this ID here. So you see this ID is very long. That's why I tagged it as Fedora my HTTPD, because that's much more easier and more human readable than remembering this long ID. Okay, so when that's done, what we're going to do now is we're going to run it. So you type podman run. So remember, we're going to change the ports. So we're going to forward port 80 in the container to port 8080. And then the name, remember, we chose my HTTPD, and then we're going to do Fedora my HTTPD. So what this does, the last part here, is instead of running the Fedora that we actually downloaded, it's going to create, think of it like a clone. And so this way, we have our own like project, which will be called my HTTPD. So this way, if I want to make another one, like number 1, number 2, number 3, I'll be able to do that. So when we do this, and then you can see could not reliably, that's fine, that's the default message, because I didn't specify an IP address. That's fine because I'm just going to be using localhost. So this is obviously my internal intranet IP address, but I'm saying this is not meant to be on a server somewhere, so it doesn't matter. So it is working now. So the next thing we do is we just need to open up our web browser and go to localhost 8080, or we can go to this IP address. So I'm going to go back to the web browser here, and in here, so we type localhost 8080. So as you can see, because I went to localhost 8080, you see this is the message. Remember this from our index.html5. Podman is successfully installed Apache server. Then it forwarded port 80 to 8080 locally. And by the way, you can sign up for the Learning PHP course on jamboshop.com, and you can see down here on the left, it actually goes there. It's an actual link. So for example, if I click that, you see it will actually go to jamboshop.com. Okay, remember we can also get it by the IP address. I'll just type the IP address 168.1.22, and it's 8080. And you can see here as well, it's the same thing. Now, if you're wondering why the other one was zoomed in, that's because when I was doing previous tutorials, I had zoomed in, and I was also using that same port number. So you notice here, this one, it says it's not secure. So that's perfectly fine. So as you can see, the same thing again. Obviously, this does work. You can see in the bottom left here. So it does work. Now, the reason I use an index.html file is because I did not want to have to type in slash then something else. Oh, sorry, at the end there, I didn't want to type that in. So that's it. So you can have more. You can have other files as well. You can even do an entire folder. As I said, for example, this is a WordPress site. You are able to do that. So this is so for example, if I was collaborating with somebody else and they wanted to have the same conditions I have locally, I'll just send them my Docker file, which is just a set of instructions to build the same, so they'll have a one-to-one. So this is another way people can test. For example, let's say a new version of PHP came out. You could have multiple versions installed these days on any operating system, but it's usually easier to have your preferred one. And then for testing, you can have other different containers. And also with this, you could have separate containers. You could have one container just for PHP, one container for the database, and another container for maybe Nginx, Apache, all different versions as well. So that's what containers are useful for. And as I was saying is that, for example, for the Learning PHP course on jamboshop.com, I actually had a pod, and all it was running is just PHP. So that's another use case. Okay, so I think that's it for the coding part of the tutorial. Now we can finish up here with the article. It's available on jambo.com/manage-containers with Podman. I just touched on a very basic use case for Podman. It does way more than what I've shown here today. So for example, as you can see here, this is what I was saying when I was testing. I was able to test the chicken cam application in the Podman, as you can see here. And this is the live video. So the good thing about YouTube is that it will be live immediately. So this is great. So as I said, Podman is open source. It's licensed under the Apache version 2.0 license. That it's a permissive license. That means that the only thing it requires is the preservation of the copyright notice and disclaimer. As usual, just consult the license for more specific details. A quick reminder again that I host a live stream every day. You visit jambo.com, you go to watch live, and then you can see which one, like for example, right now, this is the one that's live recording right now, and then the upcoming ones will be here as well, and on what platform, and what time as well. You can see the time there as well. And be sure to subscribe, like, follow, leave comments for more frequent content. So if you enjoyed this, consider supporting me. Purchase one of my WordPress plugins at ojambo.com, enroll in my programming courses on ojamboshop.com, buying my programming books on Amazon, search for Edward Ojambo, links in the description. Hire me for your programming and app development needs on ojamboservices.com, and becoming a donor at ojambo.com/donate. So the donate is here, and also in the header, which is a fixed header. You can see it's a simple icon here. Click and it will take you there. So that's it. Conclusion, Podman can be used as a Docker alternative. Podman uses the same commands as Docker and is daemon-less, allowing a regular user to manage containers. And it can manage multiple containers as a single unit, providing a more flexible and powerful way to manage containerized applications. Okay, so that's it. See you in the next one. Bye.